Oleg Deripaska consulting work. In approximately 2005, Manafort began working for Deripaska, a Russian oligarch who has a global empire involving aluminum and power companies and who is closely aligned with Vladimir Putin. A memorandum described work that Manafort performed for Deripaska in 2005 regarding the post-Soviet republics referenced the need to brief the Kremlin and the benefits that the work could confer on, quote, the Putin government, end quote. Gates described the work Manafort did for Deripaska as, quote, political risk insurance, end quote, and explained that Deripaska used Manafort to install friendly political officials in countries where Deripaska had business interests. Manafort's company earned tens of millions of dollars from its work for Deripaska and was loaned millions of dollars by Deripaska as well. In 2007, Deripaska invested through another entity in Pericles Emerging Market Partners LP, quote, Pericles, end quote, an investment fund created by Manafort and former Manafort business partner Richard Davis. The Pericles Fund was established to pursue investments in Eastern Europe. Deripaska was the sole investor. Gates stated in interviews with the office that the venture led to a deterioration of the relationship between Manafort and Deripaska. In particular, when the fund failed, litigation between Manafort and Deripaska ensued. Gates stated that, by 2009, Manafort's business relationship with Deripaska had, quote, dried up, end quote. According to Gates, various interactions with Deripaska and his intermediaries over the past few years have involved trying to resolve the legal dispute. As described below, in 2016, Manafort, Gates, Kalimnik, and others engaged in efforts to revive the Deripaska relationship and resolve the litigation. Part 2? Because that was part 1 of A? I don't fucking know how all these are. Who fucking cares? Political consulting work. Through Deripaska, Manafort was introduced to Renat Akhmetov, a Ukrainian oligarch who hired Manafort as a political consultant. In 2005, Akhmetov hired Manafort to engage in political work supporting the Party of Regions, a political party in Ukraine that was generally understood to align with Russia. Manafort assisted the Party of Regions in regaining power, and its candidate, Viktor Yanukovych, won the presidency in 2010. Manafort became a close and trusted political advisor to Yanukovych during this time as president of Ukraine. Yanukovych served that role until 2014, when he fled to Russia amidst popular protests. I remember those protests. This is one of the contested points. So, like, if you ever see this about, like, Ukraine stuff, the big thing is Yanukovych, I'm pretty sure, during there's a name for the uprising that happened there, and when I think of it, I'll say it. I'm a trash person for not remembering it now, but basically the uprising that happened in Ukraine, people stormed. Even though he won, he was super corrupt, and that was like a big thing, like the pro-Russian side, and they suspect all manner of shit, so they stormed. And when he was confronted with the people, he ordered his snipers on the roof to just open fire on the people. I'm pretty sure, like, it was just like, oh yeah, like the people are obviously so unhappy with me being in here that I'm going to use military force to do it. And when he did, it didn't stop things. It sparked him off, and then he ended up fleeing the country. And so then they held another election after that. I'm pretty sure. It's going to bug me that I can't remember that. Konstantin Kalimnik, Part 3. Kalimnik is a Russian national who has lived in both Russia and Ukraine and was a long-time Manafort employee. Kalimnik had direct and close access to Yanukovych as senior entourage, and he facilitated communications between Manafort and his clients, including Yanukovych and multiple Ukrainian oligarchs. Kalimnik also maintained a relationship with Deripaska's deputy, Viktor Boyarkin. Boyarkin? I don't give a shit. Fuck Russians. A Russian national who previously served in the defense attaché office of the Russian embassy to the United States. Manafort told the office that he did not believe Kalimnik was working as a Russian, quote, spy, end quote. The FBI, however, assesses that Kalimnik has ties to Russian intelligence. Several pieces of the office's evidence, including witness interviews and emails obtained through the court-authorized search warrants, support that assessment. Bullet points. Bullet point 1. Kalimnik was born on April 27th, 1970, in Fuckface Oblast, then of the Soviet Union, and attended the Military Institute of the Ministry of Defense 1987 until 1992. He was born in Dnepropetrovsk, Trovisk. Yeah, fuckface was better, or whatever I said. Sam Patton, a business partner to Kalimnik, stated that Kalimnik told him that he was a translator in the Russian army for 7 years and that he had later worked in the Russian armament industry selling arms and military equipment. Bullet 2. U.S. government visa records reveal that Kalimnik obtained a visa to travel to the United States with a Russian diplomatic passport in 1997. Bullet 3. Kalimnik worked for the International Republican Institute's IRI Moscow office. So the International Republican Institute's Moscow office, where he did translation work and general office management from 1998 to 2005. While another official recalled the incident differently, one former associate of Kalimnik's at IRI told the FBI that Kalimnik was fired from his post because his links to Russian intelligence were too strong. The same individual stated that it was well known at IRI that Kalimnik had links to the Russian government. Bullet 4. Jonathan Hawker, a British national who was a public relations consultant at FTI Consulting, worked with DMI on a public relations campaign for Yanukovych. After Hawker's work for DMI ended, Kalimnik contacted Hawker about working for a Russian government entity on a public relations project that would promote, in Western and Ukrainian media, Russia's position on its 2014 invasion of Crimea. Section 5. Gates suspected that Kalimnik was a, quote, spy, end quote, a view that he shared with Manafort, Hawker, and Alexander van der Zwaan. Weird. An attorney who worked with DMI on a report for the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Part B of that section about Manafort. Contacts during Paul Manafort's time with the Trump campaign. Subsection 1. Paul Manafort joins the campaign. Manafort served on the Trump campaign from late March to August 19th, 2016. Goodness. On March 29th, 2016, the campaign announced that Manafort would serve as the campaign's, quote, convention manager, end quote. On May 19th, 2016, Manafort was promoted to campaign chairman and chief strategist, and Gates, who had been assisting Manafort on the campaign, was appointed deputy campaign chairman. Thomas Barrack and Roger Stone both recommended Manafort to candidate Trump. In early 2016, at Manafort's request, Barrack suggested to Trump that Manafort join the campaign to manage the Republican convention. Stone had worked with Manafort from approximately 1980 until the mid-1990s, through various consulting and lobbying firms. Manafort met Trump in 1982 when Trump hired the Black, Manafort, Stone, and Kelly lobbying firm. Over the years, Manafort saw Trump at political and social events in New York City and at Stone's wedding, and Trump requested VIP status at the 1988 and 1996 Republican conventions worked by Manafort. According to Gates, in March 2016, Manafort traveled to Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida to meet with Trump. Trump hired him at that time. Manafort agreed to work on the campaign without pay. Manafort had no meaningful income at this point in time, but resuscitating his domestic political campaign career could be financially beneficial in the future. Gates reported that Manafort intended, if Trump won the presidency, to remain outside the administration and monetize his relationship with the administration. Subsection 2. Sounds like a pretty cool guy, right? Paul Manafort's campaign period contacts. Immediately upon joining the campaign, Manafort directed Gates to prepare for his review separate memoranda addressed to Deripaska, Akhmetov, Sergei Levyochkin, and Boris Kalinoskov. The last three being Ukrainian oligarchs who were senior opposition bloc officials. The memoranda described Manafort's appointment to the Trump campaign and indicated his willingness to consult on Ukrainians' politics in the future. On March 30th, 2016, Gates emailed the memoranda and a press release announcing Manafort's appointment to Kalimnik for translation and dissemination. Manafort later followed up with Kalimnik to ensure his messages had been delivered, emailing on April 11th, 2016 to ask whether Kalimnik had shown, quote, our friends, end quote, the media coverage of his new role. Kalimnik replied, quote, absolutely, every article, end quote. Manafort further asked, quote, how do we use to get whole? Has OVD, Oleg Vladimir Deripaska, Operation Scene, end quote. Kalimnik wrote back the same day, quote, "Yes, I have been sending everything to Viktor Boyarkin, Deripaska's deputy, who has been forwarding the coverage directly to OVD," end quote. Gates reported that Manafort said that being hired on the campaign would be, quote, "good for business," end quote, and increased the likelihood of that Manafort would be paid the approximately $2 million he was owed for previous political consulting work in Ukraine. Gates also explained to the office that Manafort thought his role on the campaign could help, quote, "confirm," end quote, that Deripaska had dropped the Pericles lawsuit, and that Gates believed Manafort sent polling data to Deripaska, as discussed further below, so that Deripaska would not move forward with his lawsuit against Manafort. Gates further stated that Deripaska wanted a visa to the United States, that Deripaska could believe that having Manafort in a position inside the campaign or administration might be helpful to Deripaska, and that Manafort's relationship with Trump could help Deripaska in other ways as well. Gates stated, however, that Manafort never told him anything specific about what, if anything, Manafort might be offering Deripaska. Sounds pretty sketchy if you ask me. Gates also reported that Manafort instructed him in April 2016 or early May 2016 to send Kalimnik the... That's a weird sentence. I'm starting over. Gates also reported that Manafort instructed him in April 2016 or early May 2016 to send Kalimnik campaign internal polling data and other updates so that Kalimnik in turn could share it with Ukrainian oligarchs. Ugh, awful sentence. Gates understood that the information would also be shared with Deripaska. Gates reported to the office that he did not know why Manafort wanted him to send polling information, but Gates thought it was a way to showcase Manafort's work, and Manafort wanted to open doors to jobs after the Trump campaign ended. Gates said that Manafort's instruction included sending internal polling data prepared for the Trump campaign by pollster Tony Fabrizio. Fabrizio had worked with Manafort for years and was brought into the campaign by Manafort. Gates stated that, in accordance with Manafort's instruction, he periodically sent Kalimnik polling data via WhatsApp. Gates then deleted the communications on a daily basis. Gates further told the office that, after Manafort left the campaign in mid-August, Gates sent Kalimnik polling data less frequently, and that the data he sent was more publicly available information and less internal data. Gates' account about polling data is consistent, grand jury redacted, with multiple emails that Kalimnik sent to the U.S. associates and press contacts between late July and mid-August 2016. Those emails referenced, quote, "internal polling," end quote, described the status of the Trump campaign and Manafort's role in it, and assessed Trump's prospects for victory. Manafort did not acknowledge instructing Gates to send Kalimnik internal data, redacted. The office also obtained contemporaneous emails that shed light on the purpose of the communications with Deripaska and that are consistent with Gates' account. For example, in response to a July 7th, 2016 email from a Ukrainian reporter about Manafort's failed Deripaska-backed investment, Manafort asked Kalimnik whether there had been any movement on, quote, "this issue with our friend," end quote. Gates stated that, quote, "our friend," end quote, likely referred to Deripaska, and Manafort told the office the issue, that the, quote, "issue," end quote, and, quote, "our biggest interest," end quote, as stated below, was a solution to the Deripaska Pericles issue. Kalimnik replied, "I am carefully optimistic on the question of our biggest interest. Our friend Boyarkin said there is lately significantly more attention to the campaign in his boss's, Deripaska's, mind, and he will be most likely looking for ways to reach out to you pretty soon. Understanding all the time sensitivity, I am more than sure that it will be resolved and we will get back to the original relationship with V's boss, Deripaska." 8 minutes later, Manafort replied to Kalimnik, "should tell Boyarkin..." Ugh, I really don't like these sentences. Ugh. 8 minutes later, Manafort replied that Kalimnik should tell Boyarkin's, quote, "boss," end quote, a reference to Deripaska, quote, "that if he needs private briefings, we can accommodate," end quote. Manafort has alleged to the office that he was willing to brief Deripaska only on public campaign matters and gave an example, why Trump selected Mike Pence as a vice presidential running mate. Manafort said he never gave Deripaska a briefing. Manafort noted that if Trump won, Deripaska would want to use Manafort to advance whatever interest Deripaska had in the United States and elsewhere. Boom, 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 boom. There's a whole bunch in this Kalimnik, dude. Ooh, okay. Paul Manafort's 2 campaign period meetings with Konstantin Kalimnik in the United States. Manafort twice met with Kalimnik in person during the campaign period, once in May and again in August 2016. The first meeting took place on May 7, 2016 in New York City. In the days leading to the meeting, Kalimnik had been working to gather information about the political situation in Ukraine. That included information gleaned from a trip that former Party of Regions official Yuri Boyko had recently taken to Moscow, a trip that likely included meetings between Boyko and high-ranking Russian officials. Kalimnik then traveled to Washington, D.C. on or about May 5th, 2016. While in Washington, Kalimnik had prearranged meetings with State Department employees. Late on the evening of May 6th, Gates arranged for Kalimnik to take a 3 a.m. train to meet Manafort in New York for breakfast on May 7th. According to Manafort, during the meeting, he and Kalimnik talked about events in Ukraine, and Manafort briefed Kalimnik on the Trump campaign, expecting Kalimnik to pass the information back to individuals in Ukraine and elsewhere. Manafort stated that that opposition bloc members recognized Manafort's position on the campaign was an opportunity, but Kalimnik did not ask for anything. Kalimnik spoke about a plan of Boyko to boost election participation in the eastern zone of Ukraine, which was the base for the opposition bloc. Kalimnik returned to Washington, D.C. right after the meeting with Manafort. Manafort met with Kalimnik a second time at the Grand Havana Club in New York City on the evening of August 2nd, 2016. The events leading to the meetings are as follows. On July 28th, 2016, Kalimnik flew from Kyiv to Moscow. The next day, Kalimnik wrote to Manafort requesting that they meet using coded language about a conversation he had that day. In an email with the subject line, black caviar, end quote, Kalimnik wrote, "I met today with the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar several years ago. We spent about 5 hours talking about his story, and I have several important messages from him to you. He asked me to go and brief you on our conversation, and I said I have to run it by you first. But in principle, I am prepared to do it. It has to do with the future of his country and is quite interesting." Manafort identified, quote, the guy who gave him the biggest black caviar jar, end quote, as Yanukovych. He explained that in 2010, he and Yanukovych had lunch to celebrate the recent presidential election. Yanukovych gave Manafort a large jar of black caviar that was worth approximately $30,000 to $40,000. Manafort's identification of Yanukovych as, quote, the guy who gave you your biggest jar of black caviar, end quote, is consistent with Kalimnik being in Moscow, where Yanukovych resided, when Kalimnik wrote, quote, I met with the guy today, end quote. And with a December 2016 email in which Kalimnik referred to Yanukovych as BG, redacted for grand jury, stretch. Manafort replied to Kalimnik's July 29th email, quote, Tuesday, August 2nd is best, Tuesday or Wednesday in NYC, end quote. 3 days later, on July 31st, 2016, Kalimnik flew back to Kyiv from Moscow, and on that same day wrote to Manafort that he needed, quote, about 2 hours, end quote, for their meeting, quote, because it is a long caviar story to tell, end quote. Kalimnik wrote that he would arrive at JFK on August 2nd at 7:30, and he and Manafort agreed to a late dinner that night. Documentary evidence including flight, phone, and hotel records, and the timing of text messages exchanged, confirms the dinner took place as planned on August 2nd. As to the contents of the meeting itself, the accounts of Manafort and Gates, who arrived late to the dinner, differ in certain respects, but their version of events, when assessed alongside available documentary evidence and what Kalimnik told business associate Sam Patton, indicate that at least three principal topics were discussed. First, Manafort and Kalimnik discussed a plan to resolve the ongoing political problems in Ukraine by creating an autonomous republic in its more industrialized eastern region of Donbass and having Yanukovych, the United Ukrainian president ousted in 2014, elected to head that republic. That plan, Manafort later acknowledged, constituted a, quote, backdoor, end quote, means for Russia to control eastern Ukraine. Manafort initially said that if he had not cut off the discussion, Kalimnik would have asked Manafort in the August 2nd meeting to convince Trump to come out in favor of the peace plan, and Yanukovych would have expected Manafort to use his connections in Europe and Ukraine to support the plan. Manafort also initially told the office that he had said to Kalimnik that the plan was crazy, that the discussion ended, and that he did not recall Kalimnik asking Manafort to reconsider the plan after their August 2nd meeting. Manafort said, redacted, that he reacted negatively to Yanukovych sending years later an, quote, urgent, end quote, request when Yanukovych needed him. When confronted with an email written by Kalimnik on or about December 8th, 2016, however, Manafort acknowledged Kalimnik raised the peace plan again in that email. Manafort ultimately acknowledged Kalimnik also raised the peace plan in January and February of 2017 meetings with Manafort. Second, Manafort briefed Kalimnik on the state of the Trump campaign and Manafort's plan to win the election. That briefing encompassed the campaign's messaging and its internal polling data. According to Gates, it also included discussion of, quote, battleground, end quote, states, which Manafort identified as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. Manafort did not refer explicitly to, quote, battleground, end quote, states in his telling of the August 2nd discussion. Redacted. Third, according to Gates and what Kalimnik told Patton, Manafort and Kalimnik discussed two sets of financial disputes related to Manafort's previous work in the region. Third, according to Gates and what Kalimnik told Patton, Manafort and Kalimnik discussed two sets of financial disputes related to Manafort's previous work in the region. Those consisted of the unresolved Deripaska lawsuit and the funds that the opposition bloc owed to Manafort for his political consulting work, and how Manafort might be able to obtain payment. After this meeting, Gates and Manafort both stated that they left separately from Kalimnik because they knew the media was tracking Manafort and wanted to avoid media reporting on his connections. Gotcha. We haven't even gotten to the real good stuff here. We're getting to his resignation and stuff like that. And that's where it gets really juicy because remember, this gentleman and Roger Stone were both pardoned and probably shouldn't have been. There's a kind of a wild thing. You hide a bunch of money between yourself and Russia, and then the president of the United States bails you out for it. It's kind of unheard of, if you ask me. If you ever wonder why I go back through and I watch or read through this stuff, it's because a lot of this stuff got brushed past, or somebody did the overview and then didn't come and do it. I feel like a lot of this stuff is more nefarious than people know, and I heard something about Trump that kind of informed it pretty well. It was like an Instagram reel or something, so I can't give proper credit, but basically it was the idea that Trump isn't good at anything. He is good and only good, but very good at playing a successful whatever. So he was never a successful businessman. And I didn't come up with this theory, so I wish I could give more credit to the person who actually did. But it goes something like this, that Trump isn't very successful in any aspect. He's bankrupt at the casinos. His businesses do a questionable amount. He lied about getting all the funding because he obviously wasn't making the money where you would need to be. So there are a lot of questionable business decisions, a lot of stuff like that you can look at. But one of the big things is he played a successful businessman well. That was one of the only things that people really know him well for back then, was going on and doing The Apprentice and having that thing where he pretended to run a boardroom and he pretended to do this stuff. And he had the status at the time, so people kind of paid him that respect and that sort of thing. So it made the show feel like he was getting something done. He said he wanted something done. It's done. Production was, oh, we're going to light you from the left. No, fuck you. I'm going to light me from the right. And then the ratings do really, really well. I think we are living with that. And the way the person described it is we're all experiencing the fallout of some of us voting in somebody who is just a reality star version of a politician. Somebody who's going to come in and pretend. It's one of the most telling things that I remember from the John Bolton book. I think it's called The Room Where It Happened. If you ever get a chance to read it, it was very good. But John Bolton talks about the conversations that happened in the Oval, and it's almost like it's a performance. The way he describes it, it's like Trump likes the kind of dramatic arguments, the shouting matches back and forth, and then him ending on like the really clever line, like he wants to come in and say like the movie tagline, fade to black, boom, like, he wants that moment so bad, so he tries to do it over and over and over again in every conversation. Like, he just looks for that style of discord from himself. That's what he tries to abide. And it's just, if you ask me, it's just gross. It's just pretending to be something you're not. You don't have anything. People really like you. You got lucky, and you're the leader of a cult. Don't make it out to be something more than it was. I think the best one that I heard, that'll be a good one to read for stream. So people talk about it sometimes like, oh, Trump, must have some insane skill. Like, how would you get, all these people to believe you or stuff like that? And there's something to it. Being willing to sell people something they could never have, but doing it with a smile, people will buy it. And it's not to say that those people are bad for doing it. It's just usually we count on people being better people. Like, you don't promise something that you can't deliver on, or at least reasonably as much as you could know. You don't think they'll get burned on this thing. That's what really gets me, is his ability to uniquely burn us all, is just it's gonna take over. He sells you what you want, and then you buy it. And the dupe is, he was telling you what you wanted the whole time, and then the way out of the dupe, the way out of the cult, is to go towards harder shit. So it's already hard doing what we've done. It's already hard making this mistake. It's already hard, living this way. Now you're selling it has to get worse. It has to get worse before it gets better. And we hear these things, but it's not intuitive. You want things to be easy if they're fun, or if they're, nice. Somebody captured it, I feel like, pretty well on Reddit. Trump says what people want to hear. People don't want to hear that climate change will flood Florida over the next century if left unchecked. People don't want to hear that their cushy manufacturing jobs are simply not coming back and they must adapt. People don't want to hear that inflation isn't reversible and they'll have to adapt to new prices. And most of all, people don't want to struggle with those things and make changes if they can avoid it. We are all creatures of habit at heart. It's really easy to listen to someone who blames those problems on someone else or finds an easy solution. To imagine that if we only ban trans people from existing, that women's rights would be secure, that if we arrest every illegal immigrant and deport them, that the crime would be gone completely, that climate change is liberals lying to you, that tariffs will rebuild American economy by making others pay. It takes courage and critical thinking skills to unpack those proposals and say, quote, that's not going to work. The problem is more complex than that, end quote. Because it means admitting that there isn't an easy, pain-free solution to those things. In essence, Trump is offering people hope that complex problems with difficult consequences for Americans will be easily solved without effort. And that's a very attractive viewpoint for someone to buy into, and a difficult one to exit from, because the alternatives are scary. I think that really just captures what it was. The one that I use, it's like, right now you have 70 million people who are walking heads down as Trump leads them off a cliff. The cliff is, way off in the distance. They're walking towards the cliff. You see them headed towards the cliff. They're showing no signs of slowing down, stopping, and Trump is known to lead his people off of cliffs. You just know, that it's a thing. This guy leads people off of cliffs. It's like what he fucking does. You have to know that's what you're looking out for if you're dealing with this guy, right? While you're watching those people, the alternative is, hey, the only way to get out of this line, because your feet are so stuck to the rhythm or whatever, you got to chop your feet off. That can't be the option. We, as people who want people out of the cult, have to provide a softer landing ground. But that is what they feel. They feel that the consequences are worse. The consequences are what? There may be a cliff somewhere, and I'm not going to see it. Whatever. It's probably not even real. Or you want me to chop my feet off right now and start doing the work right now? That sounds awful. It's about what we can reasonably expect people to do. Do we reasonably expect people to choose what's worst for them? I don't. I think they're going to choose what's best for them or what's easiest for them and then roll with it. And honestly, maybe we should start thinking that way and meeting people where they are. That'll be a good 30 minutes. That'll be a good